I think what we've had in the last hour are three very interesting social observers and social researchers looking at those bits of the office that you can't easily capture in safe metrics, looking at activity, looking at culture, looking at behaviour. So we've got some time for some questions now. I'd like to throw it open immediately to the floor. So if you'd like to say who you are and who you want to aim your question at. So who would like to have the first go? Okay. If we haven't got the first question, let's go to the second question. Right, there you go.
Thank you. Well, just for the sake of somebody asking a question, how do you reconcile what we heard this afternoon with the 3 case studies we saw this morning?
This is the accountancy case studies. Yeah, right. Okay. So, well, who would like to pick that one up? Which of the top 3 accountancy practice is a spiritual explorer, and which one's the global sustainer?
Well, I'm prepared to have a go. Are any of
the floor is yours.
Are any of the accountancy presenters still here? Okay. Well, the good news about the 3 accountancy presentations is that although they are all put your eggs in one basket solutions locationally, so they are all big workplace consolidations, the good news is that they are all centrally located, which means that people can get to them relatively more easily in public transportation terms than they could if they were in somewhere around the M25, for example. So they're not necessarily, it doesn't solve the problem of localism that I referenced when I talked about the long journeys to work for individuals that the power of agglomeration causes. But at least there are many, many routes that you can take to get to them. And the other good thing is that once you get to a centre, there is a plurality of infrastructure outside the office, so you're not just golden handcuffed to the swimming pool and the climbing wall and the in-house canteen. There are a lot of options out there, which is absolutely not the case when you get these very big workplace consolidations in out-of-town sites. So there are issues, but they're not the same issues as there would be in big out-of-town complexes.
Okay. Any other comments from our panel on the accountancy practices?
Well, they were all 3 doing things they hadn't done before, so they were going beyond their experience. And KPMG says they spent 5 years thinking about it, so they weren't rushing into it, which is quite right. But you wonder whether they use all the resources available in terms of anticipating the consequences of their changes. And when you look at the cube, essentially they were changing the conventions of how you use space, and they had a different physical setting. Well, in a way, that's not an unmanageable thing to study. And I wonder whether there were methods of anticipating the consequences which could have helped. Who knows? But they thought carefully, which is prudent, and let's hope their experiments were successful.
I told my auditor joke to somebody at lunchtime, and they said, don't. Next question, please. Who would like to ask the next question? Yes, gentleman there.
Excuse me, sorry.
Jim Reed of Arup.
Thanks, Jeremy. Annalisa's closing words were something like, the future's in our hands, it's up to us to mould how we want to go forward. And that's a very valid question, but surely that's nothing new. What makes the connection between the way we behave in the workplace and technology new now? Or is it something that's completely different? Is it technology that's driving people, or are people driving technology more so than they did before? Which way around do you think it is?
If that's a question to me, I would say that it depends. I think the biggest problem is it's not a new thing, but we keep talking about it. Just look at transparency. We're still talking about it. And I guess that we haven't even started to explore how we can use emotion in the workplace in order to get much more efficient, efficiency back. Economists now are just starting to sort of touch the surface of that it's not technology that makes the people efficient. It's basically creating an emotionally enhancing space. Happy people are 12% more efficient, and this is from a recent report you can all download from the internet from Aviva. So I think we're just, Edward de Bono said it so well this morning, there's not enough good thinking. We have to strive to think different. We have to just understand maybe to jump out and start with the right brain thinking and then support it with left brain, not the other way around. That's really my song today.
I mean, I was very struck with when you showed your kind of matrix at the end there, Annalisa. I wasn't looking for a box to put myself in. I saw them as a series of modes that people are modal. They switch from one to the other at different times.
Even throughout time. Are we not speed hunters? Perhaps when we were younger, I was surely thinking in the 80s. I mean, it used to be I think, therefore I am, and then it was I shop, and therefore I am. And now it's perhaps I feel, and therefore I am. And we go from maybe the speed hunter in the creative space, and when we then can afford it, we become a little bit more empathic. And then maybe after a stroke or a cancer scare, we step into the spiritual space. I mean, in Denmark now, men are sitting in hardcore-nosed businessmen, with a loose tie and meditate and talking about spiritual products and services. This is definitely a shift in mindset over the last sort of 20 years or so.
Maybe not the Danes I've been out drinking with, but there you go. Anyway.
Jim's question.
Yeah.
A response to your question, Jim, I think for me, the significant shift that we need is to stop thinking about workplace buildings in such a hermetic way. We tend to think about them as a container, and this is the magic box in which all the things either have to happen or not. Can we afford them or not? And what I was trying to communicate, and I hope I achieved it to some extent in my presentation, is to think much more about the urban context that all of us inhabit as workers, as friends, as sportsmen, as children, as parents, as pet owners, as whatever. And there is a massive sequence of spatial opportunities that we need to engage with in the way we negotiate our lives. And the workplace is the workplace building, which has a legitimacy and a value. I don't for 1 minute suggest that there aren't big benefits that you can get from that scene and that set of opportunities. But it's only part of the picture. And I think the big shift, now that we have technology to uncouple us from place, is to really grasp that as an opportunity and be much more confident about harnessing the whole spectrum of opportunities that the environment offers us at a range of spatial scales that have different relevance to us depending on how we want to live today, tomorrow, this week. And each day will be different, even though there are rhythms and consistency. So that's my strong plea to say this is a special moment.
Okay, thank you. Right, one more question from the floor.
I just had a small thing.
Yeah?
I think we also have to understand what we do in that workspace, which is no longer just the box. We are not manufacturing the same way. Basically, we are in the ideas economy. And I think what is an interesting way of looking at it, Google Flex, probably most of you know that, is actually a program that is allowing its engineers to work on their own projects 20% of the time. That's 1 day a week. And 50% of the ideas that is launched by Google are ideated in those 20%, where people have their own say and can do whatever they want to. And I think that's really an interesting way of understanding that Google is not just a company. It's a whole new way of thinking and understanding people and how really to breathe a different emotional space.
Okay, so who would like the last word? Yeah?
Hi, a quick one for Dr. Fawcett, but for everyone really. I was very interested in the way that you presented the 2/3, 1/3 approach. Are there any examples that you'd be willing to share where you've seen people make what you would consider perhaps bad decisions based on inferences they've taken from assumptions? And to everyone else as well.
I would need some warning. I can't think quite that fast, but I can't. I mean, yes, all the restaurants that fail. The average life of a restaurant is 18 months, and I'm not sure that's different. But I mean, lots of enterprises fail, and maybe that's okay up to a point. Innovation is risky, but you want to mitigate the risk by anticipating as much as you can about the mechanisms that are underlying the initiative. You have objectives. You want to focus on the objectives, but you also want to understand the mechanisms and not just hope the objectives will be fulfilled because you want them so much.
I'll give an example about what I think are really bad assumptions. That we will relocate to where we can have a comparative saving on the real estate cost. So we have a big bookkeeping saving on our property cost. It's a location that people find really difficult and alienating to get there. So there's very, very low turnout. And the people costs of being bled, huge attrition, very low return on the human resource investment, hard to measure the productivity loss in the short term, very easy to measure the real estate saving in the short term, a very bad decision for a business.
Okay. It's very interesting that Lenny and Ben from CB Richard Ellis, just before lunch, said innovation was the intimate and serendipitous interactions that go on, and here was William finding a way to model them. And here is Ziona saying, well, if you haven't got there in the first place, there's absolutely no point. And Annalisa saying, people come into these spaces in a modal frame of mind. They want it fast, they want it slow, and they want it at the same time. And so, things are very, very complex. I am with William, however, on this whole issue of not just case study, but modelling. And I think that the workspace area has been woeful at finding ways to model this type of activity. They just thought, well, it's too difficult. And I think we're going to see a lot more modelling. It doesn't mean case studies are going away. I think we're going to see a lot more modelling in the future.